after class. I got so caught up reviewing for this morning, I forgot. So do you know we have, we're filming now? Yeah, so if you're watching, we apologize if you tried to watch live streaming. There was a technical glitch, so I know you're now watching after the fact. I'm sorry you can't send in questions, etc., but please be in touch if you have any. So just to catch us up, right, we're looking at these 4 chapters, 12, 13, 14, 15, that are now defining the Beinoni, and also giving us some real-life tools, some real-life tools about how to start moving towards being a Beinoni. Right, so chapter 12, we looked at the definition of a Beinoni, which primarily is about the garments of the soul versus the identity of the soul, right? The behavior of the soul versus who the soul is. Right? So in a Beinoni, who the soul is, just like any normal person, inside, in the attributes, intellect, and emotions, they're just like you and me. They have all kinds of cravings and ideas. But the behavior, the garments, they're just like a tzaddik. They've gotten their behavior to the point that whatever their emotional reaction is to a situation, the way they respond to their emotional reaction is 100%, always like a tzaddik. Right? So a Beinoni does not have control over what their heart decides it wants to pop into the mind, but the way they respond to any emotional stimulus is always the same. They do the right thing, the other-centered thing, the proper thing, and it's called the Jewish thing. And we learned that the big tool there is that the brain controls the heart. So whatever the heart throws up at me this morning or this afternoon, my brain can still focus on the exact opposite. I have complete freedom over what my brain focuses on, and that will eventually guide my emotional responses, but certainly it can guide my conscious thought, speech, and action. That's my big tool. The brain controls the heart. Chapter 13, we looked at the 2 inclinations, the idea that a Beinoni is judged by its evil and good inclination, or self and other-centered inclinations, and that they're just like a Russia. In our famous quote from the beginning, even if the whole world says you're a tzaddik, no matter how high level your behavior gets, consider yourself Russia, like a Russia. What does that mean? The Alter Rebbe asked in the first chapter, should I be depressed because I'm actually always going to be a Russia? Will I get flippant about the mitzvahs? Here he answers the question. He says, no, you're like a Russia in that you still haven't transformed your attributes, but you're only like a Russia because you're actually not behaving in any way that is self-centered. Right? So a Beinoni is not like a Russia in that they're an actual Russia at any point. They're only like a Russia in that their attributes still have not been transformed like a tzaddik. And in the end, we have these 2 judges that say, maybe do this, and we let them both have their say. We let the divine soul, its expression, have a say. That 3rd judge will come in, and that's the light of the Ein Sof, which will come and will tilt the decision in the favor of the divine soul every time. So all Beinoni has to do is make sure that divine soul gets its opinion on the table. And even if there's a struggle inside when it comes to behavior, God will actually help the Beinoni achieve thought, speech, and action 100%. We looked at a few levels of the Beinoni. You can review that on the video. And then we're here in chapter 14 where we learned that this is not like being a tzaddik in that only a few rare people are able to become a tzaddik. But this is, here you go. But being a Beinoni is something anyone can achieve at any time, right? And that's because it doesn't have to do with matters of the heart, right? We said if I happen to not like the famous musical Hamilton, I know it's a crazy thing to say, never liked it, and my kids listened to it day and night until I got pretty sick of it. So if someone were to bet me $1 million that I could spend, that's a terrible thing to say, Michael. That was a good show. That was just, by all, no one should dislike that show. You're probably right. You're probably right, and I'm probably wrong. You're probably wrong. You're probably right. I don't have a good schmuck for it. I don't like the music. I don't like the writing. No, I didn't see it. Why would I even go see it? Why would I spend $300 to go see something I don't like? Thank you. I gave it to charity instead. No, I didn't, but I should have, right? Okay. So
It was remarkable. The choreography.
I'm not criticizing it. I'm not criticizing it. Oh no! That's it, right? We've gone through 14 chapters of the Tanya in a Reformed synagogue, and I've been fine. But don't criticize Hamilton. That's holy. Good. So just my personal misguided opinion and feeling is I don't like Hamilton. But if someone bet me, I'm sure.
Wait for the movie.
If someone bet me $1 million that I could get myself to love like the song that I find most annoying from Hamilton, in a year I'm not sure that I could bet and win that bet that I could pass a lie detector test that I love it. No.
You see it with this choreography on the stage.
And then you'll never want to see it again. You've seen it, it's a good thing.
I might get it, you're right.
It's not even in my top 10.
Okay, the point being, however, if someone bet me $1 million, could I sit and listen to a song once a day, excluding Jewish holidays for a year? That bet I would take, right? Because I don't care how I feel about it. I can make myself sit down and listen to anything, right? I could do that. For $1 million, of course, easy. Right, I'd take that bet. It's the difference here, right? Content notwithstanding, a Beinoni has not changed how they feel about doing the right thing, right? If my wife says, honey, can you do the dishes? I may have the same feeling for the rest of my life because I'm not a tzaddik. And a tzaddik would say, of course, that's exactly what Hashem put me here to do, is help my wife and make her life easier, right? Joyfully do the dishes. Me, on the inside, there's a complaint, but that doesn't matter. I don't have to enjoy doing the dishes. I just have to do the right thing. I just have to step up and do them, whether I like it or not, right? That the Beinoni can do, and that any of us can do, because that is not something about changing the emotions. I'm not hypnotizing myself and transforming my identity. I'm just deciding, in terms of behavior, I can do the right thing, whatever I feel about it.
Can you do it gracefully?
That's an interesting word, gracefully. Gracefully. What do you mean by gracefully?
Gracefully without any visual or any tics or
Any snarkiness, any
snarkiness.
Look, if I'm dismissing from my mind my complaints, like I'm not going through in my brain thinking, oh, I hate doing this, because I'm not, that's behavior. I'm not thinking negatively about it. If I'm not speaking negatively about it, and if I'm actually doing it, that seems to me to be gracefully, right? I mean, I'm there washing my dishes and my heart says, oh, I'd rather be watching TV. Okay. But yeah, I think that's pretty graceful.
Right.
That's a pretty graceful feat. Yeah, yeah.
Especially if you're doing it.
Michael, you said anyone can be a Beinoni at any time.
Yes.
Do you mean anybody can become a Beinoni at any time?
Yeah.
Not be a Beinoni at this moment and not at the next moment. So it's more.
Yeah, no. It's not like now I am, now I'm not.
So it's
yeah.
more a become a Beinoni at any time.
Yeah, once you're a Beinoni, now you're stuck being a Beinoni. You can't be a Beinoni for 10 minutes and then.
We talked about that last time. Okay.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
want to make sure.
So I think we got the meat of this chapter. I want to sum up the next point that he makes, because it's a meditation that's interesting, but it's not one that many people focus on. I won't lie, the language is a little colorful. So if you want one of those people that wants to see all the surprising old school nuts and bolts in the Tanya, feel free to read this through. But he gives a meditation, which is, even though a normal person who can become a Beinoni at any time has that in their potential, even though they can't transform their heart, we still have to try. We've taken that oath from chapter 1. I'm going to try and be a tzaddik. And so even though I know I'll probably never be a tzaddik, and I'll probably never transform myself so that I have this intense love of delights for goodness and God and the right thing, I'll never have this intense, call it a hatred or an aversion or a respect at least for the wrong thing, right? I'm never gonna look at some self-centered activity like eating a steak because it tastes good and just enjoying it just for that reason. I'm not going to look at that and say, oh, why would I do that? What a horrible thing, like a tzaddik would. I'm looking at the steak and I'm saying, yeah, this is a great tasting steak. I'm going to really enjoy this. Okay, let me take a moment and recognize that I'm going to say a blessing and that an animal gave its life and that I can take this energy and do good things, and let me bring myself also to connect with the higher spark of this food. But it doesn't abhor me to think that I might eat the steak because I enjoy it, right? I'm not at that level. But we can try to get to that level, and he gives a little meditation that's there if you want it, and that is to take time to think about in general, whatever pleasures in the world attract me, and then take a little bit of time to meditate on their deeper reality. For instance, and I do this on occasion, I walk out of Temple Israel services, and there's this beautiful oneg with the brownies and the pink cheesecake and the strawberry shortcake, and oh, it smells so good. And I've been smelling it all morning because I walked through the library where they're cutting it up, and it's just an hour of smelling the sugary, wonderful stuff. But I really don't want to, I want to still finish my pants next year. I don't have to buy a new wardrobe, so I don't want to eat it. Sometimes what I do is I walk out and I think to myself, and this is meditation, look at this great food. In 8 minutes, what is this food going to look like? Right? Just 8 minutes in the future. That's all I have to, never mind 8 hours in the future, what's it going to look like? Right? But after everybody comes out and everybody grabs their thing and takes it and chews it, and now it's right down in their stomach, this food in 8 minutes is going to be the most revolting thing. Right? So it doesn't mean that I don't want it. It doesn't mean that it's not appealing to me. But just take a little of the edge off of my attachment to it by sitting for a little bit of time and saying, that delicious food, 10 minutes after you serve it, it's all something you wouldn't even touch. Right? Never mind 10 days or 10 hours. And similarly, he says with for instance, people, whether I'm a man attracted to women, a woman attracted to man, or some other combination, a person that I'm attracted to, now if that's an inappropriate attraction, maybe I don't want it in my mind, and a nice meditation is to say, let me sit for 5 minutes and think about how, say I watch somebody walking down the street, and from behind they look really good in whatever they're wearing, right? I'm looking at that. So instead of thinking about the surface of what I'm looking at, go 1 inch deeper, right? 1 inch deeper than just what I'm looking at. It's just all bodily fluids and gore and waste coming out. And if I just focus my mind on the reality of what's happening inside, maybe it takes a little bit of the edge off of my being attracted to the surface of the thing. Right? So it's a strange kind of old school meditation. This is not something that I know a lot of people spend time focusing on, but it is there, and it's the interesting point is that we do want to find ways to at least try and be a little more like a tzaddik. Right? This is a meditation that actually does kind of move the needle for some people. And if you take some time to sit and think, what is it that I'm most physically focused on, that most holds my attention in terms of my physical body's desires? Can I sit and look at that and just take a little bit of the edge off of that and become more like a tzaddik and have a little bit of let it have less allure for me just to focus on the physical pleasures. Does that make sense? Right? And then we get to the end of the chapter. Let's not debate that. This is just.
I'm not debating, I'm
Okay.
just saying sometimes when you go to the services, a lot of times I felt like I was carried through till Tuesday.
Yeah.
It stayed with me till Tuesday. But part of the experience was having the 7-layer cake.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's the whole experience.
Yeah. Yeah, and no one's saying that as a Jew we shouldn't enjoy the whole experience. As long as the whole experience is about having a service at temple and the 7-layer cake makes that service sweeter, okay, that's what we're talking about, right? But when I was a 4-year-old kid and I'm at the service and I can't wait and I run up to 7-layer cake and I shove it in my mouth and that's really my focus, that's a different story, right? Now I may be more polite about it, but if that's still what's happening inside, I'm still that 4-year-old that's like, I can't wait to get to the cake, it tastes good, and that's my whole experience. That's where the Alter Rebbe says, try and be more like a tzaddik, right? If it's really all about the 7-layer cake, it's not about the service, then take a moment and focus on that 7-layer cake 7 minutes later becomes something not so appetizing. So don't be so hypnotized by, the superficial here and now. Yeah, it's not, it's a useful thing. Now, the end of the chapter, let's go back inside. This is page 218 at the bottom.
We're going to skip all the way to 18?
Yeah, so over the page. Oh, you're right. No, we stopped at.
We stopped at 216.
Okay, let's go inside before. Let's finish the last point.
We stopped
Pardon
at
me.
216. In the middle, we stopped.
We're 216 in the middle. You're right.
Yeah.
Right. So he just finished the point that's why Job said, "You've created tzaddikim," because God created people that have the potential to be a tzaddik, whereas most people don't have the potential to be a tzaddik. And that's why we said be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha, because try and be a tzaddik means actually that, try and be a tzaddik, try and transform your insides. But don't be a rasha is not just repetitive. It doesn't mean once you're a tzaddik, you're not a rasha. Don't be a rasha means don't be a rasha in your behavior. Be a Beinani. Right? That's where we left off. So that explains the repetitive language in the oath that, yes, we're trying to be a tzaddik, but most of us aren't going to be a tzaddik. So if we're not a tzaddik, now don't think, well, I'm just going to be a rasha. At least be a Beinani. Right? A Beinani is not a rasha, but not a tzaddik. שבזה משפט, ולכן משביעים שנית, אל תהיה רשע על כל פנים. Each person. Go ahead, Joey.
Each person is consequently adjured a second time. You shall, at any rate, not be a rasha.
So,
Even if a-
yeah.
No, no,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Even if a person is not privileged to become a tzaddik, he should at the very least not be a rasha, being instead a Beinani.
So that's the point we went over last week. Al tia rasha means be a Beinani. It doesn't mean just once you're a tzaddik, you're definitely not a rasha. שבזה משפט הבחירה והרשות נתונה לכל אדם.
With regard to this, not being a rasha, the right of choice and freedom is extended to every man.
Right, so as we said at the beginning of the chapter, every person can be a Beinani at any point in their life. למשול ברוח תאוותו שבליבו ולכבוש יצרו שלא יהיה רשע אפילו שעה אחת כל ימיו.
To control the spirit of lust in his heart and to conquer his nature, so that he shall not be wicked for even one moment throughout his life.
So Rick, this is your point that he's emphasizing, that when I say you can be a Beinani anytime, I don't mean set the timer, be a Beinani for 10 minutes, and then go back to being a rasha, right? Once you become a Beinani, now you're not wicked for even one moment in your life. You're at that level. We discussed that paradox back in chapter, I forget which, pardon me. Ben b'chinat sumera, ben b'chinat vaset tov ve'ein tov ela Torah.
This applies both in the realm of turning away from evil, refraining from transgression, and in that of doing good, performing all the positive mitzvot in which he is obligated. And especially the mitzvot of Torah study, which is specifically termed good, as our sages say. There is no good other than Torah.
Right, so this applies both to the things I should do, the things I should avoid, and of course recognize what we learned in the earlier chapters, that we see the commandments as organs of our soul, so to speak, that are connecting to aspects of the Ein Sof. They're points of connection, and those are the ways that we allow the divine light into our consciousness. So we're really looking at this as a way of reconnecting our soul with its essential anatomy and biology, and letting it flow with its source. So that's why in this tradition, all this meditative stuff, it all comes back to which aspects of Torah have you decided are important to you, and use those as kabbalistic connections to get yourself to be at least a Beinani. Dahayunu Talmud Torah shekeneged kulan.
Meaning the study of Torah, which balances all the other mitzvot combined.
Right, and he very often gets back to that. And if you remember chapter 5, where he talked about the amazing advantage of Torah in that we actually encompass it with our minds, and at the same time it encompasses our minds. And so it's the miraculous way in Kabbalah that a limited human being can have that kind of an intimate unification with the Ein Sof, in that we encompass it, it encompasses us, and we're just all wrapped up together in this flow of unity, that there's really nothing that compares to it. So Kabbalistically, what we're doing now, our souls are experiencing this moment of union with the Ein Sof that we may not be consciously aware of, but that you can't find anywhere else in the experience of living. And then we get to this meditation we talked about, and let's move to the bottom of 218. אף על פי כן הוא יעשה את שלו לקיים את השבועה שמשביעים תהי צדיק. Nevertheless.
Nevertheless, he should do his part to uphold the oath administered him to be a tzaddik.
Right, so even though a normal person like me can't transform the core of their soul and become a tzaddik, still I have to work at it. I have to try. by doing meditations like this, by focusing on the 7-layer cake is, you know, right now it looks so appealing, but in 10 minutes it'll be another story, and kind of loosen my focus on that a little bit. That doesn't make me a tzaddik. Who am I kidding, right? I'm giving myself a meditation to kind of lessen my Rasha instincts, but I haven't become a tzaddik. But even if I can't, even if I do my whole life working and trying to refine myself and I'll never be a tzaddik, still I should do it. A, because I took the oath, so it gives me a compass bearing, it gives me a direction to prove myself. But B, there are some possibilities. This is probably the most far out possibility of how one could become at the level of a tzaddik and experience that love of delights. He's describing quite a kabbalistic reality here. Hashem yaseh hatov beinav, and God.
And God will do as He sees fit, whether to grant him the level of tzaddik or not.
Right. So God, hold on. So God may decide if I try, even though I'm not naturally a tzaddik. Let me give whomever the experience of being a tzaddik by two possible ways, right? Ve'od.
Furthermore, emulating the tzaddik and loathing evil and delighting in God produces another benefit for the Beinoni.
Right. So here's the first. She'hargel al kol davar shilton v'naseh teva sheni.
Habit reigns supreme in all matters. It becomes second nature.
Right, so even though I haven't really transformed myself, when I do it enough, you have something called a synaptic pruning that we understand in neuropsychology right now, in neuroplasticity. When I do something, every time I do it, the connections in my mind, the gaps between the neurons become more and more fluid, and I get rid of the extra stress, and that behavior becomes more and more habit until it feels second nature. And although look deep in my consciousness, there's still the other possibility. If I do something enough times and I change how I behave enough times, it could start to feel like it really is me, and it could become my identity, right? Even though at my heart there's probably still something that needs to be transformed. I'm not really a tzaddik, but that's one way to get to the experience is by just habit actually does become nature, right? Or second nature, as he's calling it here. למאס את הרע יהיה נמאס קצת באמת.
Therefore, when one accustoms himself to loathe evil, he will begin to find it truly loathsome to some extent.
And I kind of give myself the feeling, right? Take any random thing and clear it out of your house and don't touch it and stay away from it for a year, and you'll see, just psychologically, you start to kind of dread that thing. I mean, it may not be something from our tradition. There may not be any reason. You can just do it as an experiment randomly with no benefit. If I say I'm not going to have any wood in my life and I clear all the wood out of the inside of my house and I don't touch trees and I don't touch paper and I become anti-wood, after a year I'm going to kind of have a strange feeling about touching wood. It'll be unusual for me, right? So all the more so when something is part of our tradition and part of our soul pathway, even though it may not be natural to me, if I get myself in the habit of not eating this or not saying this or not thinking this or not doing this, then after long enough, I'm going to feel, as he says, it's going to be a little bit loathsome to me. I'm going to hate it somewhat, even if it's just a habitual hate that I've used my habit to create.
It's going to be controversial.
Oh.
I'm reading this and I'm listening to this and I'm saying the loathing of evil and so forth. If you have a very learned, tzaddik that's learning, isn't that self-absorbing for his purpose, number one, and number two, if he's finding evil in some of the other things that are going on, how is he accepting other people that are beneath him, so to speak, that are not learned like him?
Yeah, all this only has to do with myself. So if you look at, there's a few moments, like in chapter 32, he does discuss the concept of, am I supposed to hate a sinner, and to what extent do I have to separate the person from their behavior? And when we get to it, you'll see he touches on it slightly. And in the end, his answer is, you have to love the person no matter what, even if you're at a state where you don't like their behavior. But that's an aside. I mean, the 99% of the Tanya has to do with me assessing myself in my own state. So we're talking here about me looking at aspects of myself, which is trying to move, as I said, to being a righteous person, as opposed to me looking at other people and trying to see what's wrong with them, which is being a self-righteous person. Right? So that tzaddik you're describing, who's sitting and learning and trying to do that, it should be all about themselves. It shouldn't be about, they're not sitting and studying, oh, my friend Moshe and what he said yesterday, or my cousin so-and-so and what they did, or that person in the news. There's no reason to think about other people and assess them in that way.
But when you're interacting with other people, does that affect your perception?
Hopefully not. Hopefully your perception is all about assuming that everyone around you is a loftier soul than you, assuming that you can't experience what it is to be them and their challenges, and assuming that they're at 100%, and whereas you're still working to get to your 100%. Right? So yeah, none of this is ever about me projecting this to my friend or my cousin or my family member or whomever. It's only about me trying to prove myself, exclusively. Yeah.
Well, and it's also to be doing it with bittul. That it's not about me, but it's doing it to not just to be closer to God, because it's God's will.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not
yeah.
like I'm so special.
Yeah, it's important to come back to that regularly and recognize we keep talking about improving myself and turning myself into a tzaddik and having a love for God and yay, yay, yay. But
it's
then
not
you have to
me,
add to
me,
that,
me.
it's not a love for God because I want to experience that love. It's a love for God because I want to give God nachas.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not judgmental
Oh, no.
about others.
Once you're judgmental, that's a Russia, right? If I'm sitting thinking, oh, that person, yeah. Yeah, if I'm sitting to myself thinking, oh, that person didn't give charity, or that person isn't observing this mitzvah in this way, or that person this, that's just plain a Russia having normal thoughts of Russia. That's not a Bainani, or certainly not a tzaddik, right?
This reminds me of this person I saw speaking at the Holocaust Center on Sunday. He was being groomed to be the next Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, his grandfather was some Grand Wizard, and but then he went to school, in college, and he met a Jewish guy who invited him for Sabbath dinner several times, and he started to completely change his ways. He didn't convert to Judaism, but he started being against the Ku Klux Klan and doing everything he can now to convince other people that that's not the right way to go.
Right. Well, that definitely speaks to that, right? I might see a person like that, might hear him make some comment that I find to be racist and horrible, and then I might start thinking in my mind, what a horrible person! He really has to be different as to this. Do I understand what it's like to be raised by a parent who is so into that horrible ideology and raises you to believe it? And maybe the whole journey of his soul is to just break away from that and have one good connection with the Jewish person. And for him, that's 100% for his soul, right? Whereas for me, I was raised to believe that everybody's a good person, and that's a horrible ideology to let into my mind. So for me to sit and judge a person, how do I know what his path is? And maybe one day he's going to turn around and speak to Jewish people about how the KKK is wrong, right? So yeah, we're all in this to improve ourselves. And the moment I go into, well, why aren't other people, conforming to my sense of what's right and wrong? Now that's the domain of a Russia. So that's the first possibility, is I could get to be like a tzaddik by creating the habits of a tzaddik, and then that habit will become my second nature, and I actually will experience a kind of a hatred or loathing for that self-centeredness in myself when I see it. And therefore, yeah. וכשירגל לשמח נפשו בשם על ידי התבוננות בגדולת השם, and when he accustoms
himself to rejoice in God through reflecting on his greatness.
Right. So when I'm feeling like self-centered stuff, that just feels wrong to me, and I sit and meditate on this Ein Sof business that we're all just really, there's only one being here. Hare b'itaruta dil tata itaruta dil ela uchule hai v'ulai ye'are alav ruach mimaron. That on the principle that an arousal below brings a corresponding arousal above, perhaps all this effort of his, after all this effort, a spirit, a ruach from above will descend on him. Right? So there's an idea here that there's all this heavenly stuff, and there's the Ein Sof is sending all kinds of what we call light into the world. We've discussed that's not physical light. And often, or most of the time, that light comes into the world because something down in the physical world did something. So, you taught your child to share nicely, and they did it. That brings a certain light into the world that only they can bring in, and it affects all the spiritual worlds and flows down right to them. If one of us does something in our life on a regular basis that's counterproductive, and we decide we're going to change it, we're going to stop it, and we're going to replace it with something positive, it does something else too, but it brings a new light into the world, and the arousal from below, the us trying to be a better person, creates an arousal from above. We can actually affect the kind of light that flows down into the world from the Ein Sof. That's the impact of our actions and even our thoughts. So when we do that, when we accustom ourselves to reflecting on God and to loathing what is self-centered and counterproductive, then that may create an arousal above, and this is a rare thing. Keep in mind, this is not something that happens all the time. But when he says a spirit will descend upon us, he doesn't mean a general spirit. He means an actual ruach level of the soul of a tzaddik. So if you remember, we looked at the levels of the soul. Here I'll want my whiteboard, so too bad for me. Right, we have nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Right? 3 conscious levels, call them, of the soul. And when we come down for life, we're trying to rectify usually one of those levels. Most of us are working on the nefesh level, call it. Right? But once a tzaddik has rectified the nefesh level, then they have their ruach level to rectify, maybe in that same life if they're a tzaddik. And once they've rectified the ruach level, then they have the neshama level they're working on. And then once they've done that, now they're a soul back in heaven. But it's mainly the neshama that's busy in heaven looking at the light from their Torah study and their mitzvahs, etc. And the ruach is sitting there twiddling its thumbs going, no one's that excited about what I did anymore in this lower level Gan Eden, right? We're all interested in the upper level Gan Eden. What am I going to do? You got these 10 aspects of this ruach level of the tzaddik just sitting around bored in heaven because the neshama's having all the fun. So what does it do? It looks around on earth for people that are really giving it, that are really trying, that are really making a difference in their lives. And it might be, like you said, somebody that's done horrible things and is in jail and is trying to be better. Or it might be somebody that looks on the outside like they're 100% and they're just trying to elevate the world around them. Right? We don't know how these tzaddikim view the world, and we don't know where the points of interest are. But it can happen that some aspect of that ruach level of the tzaddik will actually journey down and call it join in with the soul of whoever that is that's really, really trying to be a tzaddik. And now because they have a shared experience with this aspect of a tzaddik soul, suddenly there's a turbo boost and they can actually experience the genuine ava shebetanugim, the level of love that tzaddik experiences, even if that wasn't in the potential of their own soul. So let's look at it inside and we'll describe it a little bit more. ויזכה לבחינת רוח משורש איזה צדיק שתתבאר בו לעבור השם בשמחה אמיתית.
And it will be granted to him that the soul level of Ruach, originating in the soul of some tzaddik, will be impregnated in him, so that he may serve God with true joy.
Let's not read the description, but so the Arizal just wrote in 2 books, Sefer HaGilgalim and Shar HaGilgalim. If you're curious, they're online. Described in detail the way reincarnation works in the Jewish pathway. I don't want to get into the whole business, but he describes it quite technically and clinically and in great detail in these 2 books. Shar HaGilgalim and Sefer HaGilgalim. One of them is primarily talking about different figures in Jewish history that were the same soul that had reincarnated. And the other one is more of a textbook on how reincarnation works. And it's much more complex than what is described in some other traditions, at least that I've seen. A normal reincarnation, you've all heard about the idea of a dibuk, that like one soul can come into another person's soul and sort of hijack it. Right? This is sort of in Jewish mythology, and it's possible. Sometimes some can be a little bit possessed, and a soul can come in and invade another soul and consciously change what's going on. Right?
What was the word you used?
Dibuk is like it's just like the Exorcist a possession kind of thing. Right? This is far out stuff. So this is like that, but it's a positive version of that, right? It's called an ibur. An ibur is when a gilgul is from spinning. It's when part of a soul spins off and becomes another person. So I may have lived one life, and I may have done certain work, but I still have to do more work. So that soul spins off another incarnation that enters into another body and lives another life to work on higher levels of that soul. That's the word gilgul, right? Which means, call it reincarnation. An ibur is not a spinning off of the same soul. An ibur is an impregnation. It means impregnation, where one soul comes and enters into the experience of another soul, and it can be conscious or it can be not conscious. So the person who has the ibur enter into their soul experience may be completely unaware of it, or they may be aware. And it's exactly what we described. A tzaddik may look down on the world and say, "Oh, that Sarah, she was dealt a pretty tough animal soul, and she was really only supposed to achieve this level. But look at her; she went above and beyond, and she's trying and pushing, and trying to be a tzaddik. And wouldn't it be great if we gave her the experience of being a tzaddik? And how much more could she do? I'm going to send, the chesed aspect of my ruach. I'm going to send it down to her to enter into her experience. And now that attribute of the ruach level enters into her soul like an impregnation. And suddenly, even though she was just trying to create habits of being like a tzaddik, or just trying to push herself to at least feel a little bit of it, suddenly she has this experience of total love for God on the level of delights where she's completely nullified. And there's no her anymore that's burning to get close to God, but now she has the inner experience of being a tzaddik, and also comes with it genuine aversion to any self-centered activity. It's no longer just habit. So this is kind of, for people that take this very seriously, it's kind of the jackpot. Like you can be a Bainani and work and struggle all your life, and then suddenly wake up one day and boom, you have this more enlightened experience where you really are behaving and conscious like a tzaddik, and you can have the impact on the world around you like a tzaddik, but it's not really your genuine soul level. It's another soul that's entered into your experience and is boosting you to that level. Really uncommon. So let's not go home and think, maybe I can have an ibur, right? This is like, these are people that are Bainanis to begin with. And
Come down
yeah, this is in your life.
The other soul is also is from a dead person or a live person.
It may be either. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. But typically it's thought of as being from a tzaddik that's already passed, but it may also be from the level of tzaddik that is here. I'm not sure.
So we're describing that general feeling of what? Of completion or whatever that you have.
We're describing ava shebetanugim. We're describing the level of love of delights. Remember we talked about the way that a incomplete tzaddik becomes a complete tzaddik is with this level of love that's so lofty that there's just nothing of themselves left in it. It's only God's delight. So that's a lofty level of love that's only granted from above to an incomplete tzaddik. And a Bainani maybe gets a little bit of it during the Shema, right? Or maybe not, right? So we're talking about that specific level of love and the aversion to self-centeredness or any evil that comes with it. So it's a specific and very, very lofty level of consciousness. K'dichtiv simchu tzadikim b'Hashem. Page 220.
220.
Yeah.
Yeah, thus it is written.
Page 220.
Is Igor with an I?
You skipped all the rest of the stuff?
Ibor is spelled. It was here, right?
Commentary.
Skipped all the.
We summed it up.
Skip the commentary, right. He summed it up for us.
Thus
Is
it is.
Igor
Thus
with an
is
I?
it.
It looks like it's with an ayin.
I?
Yeah.
Hello? Thus,
Thus is it written.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
you know what, let's just skip.
You can read the commentary at your leisure if you like.
We'll skip Rick today, he's a little confused.
Thus it's written, rejoice, O tzaddikim, in God.
Rejoice,
you.
right? So this alludes.
This alludes also to the idea that when two types of tzaddikim are joined together, the verses address tzaddikim in a plural form. When the Bainanim called a lower level tzaddik is impregnated with the soul of a tzaddik, a higher level tzaddik. They both rejoice in God, for the tzaddik imparts his delight in godliness to the Beinoni.
So this is his proof text. We've probably often heard that Simchut Tzadikim Baronai. It's in the Friday night liturgy, I believe, right? So many people have heard often, and you just think it means if you're a tzaddik, then be happy and rejoice in God and praise God, right? That's the poetic meaning of it. Here he brings in a deeper gloss. That is, look what it says. It doesn't say rejoice tzaddik in God. It says rejoice tzaddikim. So what does it mean when tzaddikim, plural, more than one, are rejoicing in God? That means the Beinoni who's rejoicing in God is joined by another tzaddik in their ruach level, and now those two tzaddikim rejoice in God together, and the Beinoni is granted the experience of being a tzaddik. Right, far out stuff.
Certainly.
Yes, v'titkayem bo be'emet, hashvua shemashbiim tihi tzaddik.
In this way, the oath charging him to be a tzaddik will be truly fulfilled.
Right, so that's probably like the high point in all 7,000 years of creation for any soul that could be a Beinoni, is that not only do they reach the level of Beinoni and get 100% for their soul and rectify every aspect of creation that's theirs to rectify and create incredible joy for God by doing that, but then actually they get the bonus round where a tzaddik joins them, and now their soul gets to experience what it's like to be an actual tzaddik for the rest of that lifetime, or for as long as the Ibor stays with them. So it's an unusual situation, but something, I guess, for the students of the Alter Rebbe, many of whom may have been genuine Beinonim, they want something to work towards, and he gave them a taste of this very...
So the Ibor doesn't stay with him permanently?
I don't think there's any rules about this, right? I mean, it depends.
Okay.
I assume if they kind of start to just go on automatic, as we look in the next chapter, then the Ibor may get fed up and retreat back to heaven, or find some other Beinoni to help out, or who knows.
Is this like praying in a minyan or in a group? Is that experience?
Not necessarily, no, because
Or like just being together with your family at Pesach?
you're talking about the Ibor? You're talking about the Ibor?
Yeah, that feeling of, togetherness.
Right, so that we're talking about is the dwelling of the Shekhinah, that when there are 10 Jews together, or when there are 2 Jews together doing something holy, the Shekhinah dwells on that, and you get a sense that's our relationship with God, and that's us getting a sense that surrounding light is being manifest, right? So that's one thing. But it's still me having that experience. It's still me enjoying time with my family. It's still me having a normal person experience. Here we're talking about suddenly another level soul entering into my consciousness and boosting it so that I no longer have any me left, right? And it's as if I've transformed my whole soul. So I'm not saying, wow, I really am enjoying this time with my family. It's just, oh, look at the joy Hashem has in this experience. And my only joy and my only ratzon will is just kabbalistic ratzon of Atzilus. Like, that's all that I experience. So it's like you're popping up to the level of being almost a chariot, as opposed to being a sensitive Jewish person who enjoys time with their family because I sense there's something beautiful there. I'd say, different. I'd say different. All right, chapter 15. This is our last chapter. Let's get started. Last chapter defining the Beinoni, and then we get into the first of the genuine techniques, which is the long, short path. And this chapter, after we've gone through chapters 1 to 8, which gave us all the details and information about our soul, and then we defined tzaddik, we defined a Rosh, and now we're defining a Beinoni, and now we're ready to begin our work. The last message the Alter Rebbe gives us before we go on to really the purely technique sections, or mainly technique sections, is about not shifting back on automatic ever. Right? Not down gearing to automatic ever. So we described all these levels, whether it's the level of a Rasha who only has one tiny moment of self-centeredness, but otherwise is a completely other-centered spiritual being, and that's a pretty high level for any of us to aim to. Or whether you're talking about a basic Beinoni that never compromises their behavior, thought, speech, or action, or whether a higher level Beinoni that even experiences this outpouring of love of God while they're praying, or a higher level Beinoni that it's like they're praying all day, or the highest level Beinoni where an Ibor comes down and now they're basically a tzaddik, or even an incomplete tzaddik or a tzaddik itself. Right? No matter who you are at any of these levels, it's still possible to just go on automatic. Because you're at your level. And whatever your level is, even if you're an incomplete tzaddik, which is just an extraordinary level, okay, if it's easy for you to be an incomplete tzaddik, now you could be an incomplete tzaddik on automatic. You get everything right, you love God all the time, but you're not necessarily pushing yourself and growing. So this is interesting to note that this is the last piece the Alter Rebbe gives before we go into the pure technique that he's presenting to us. And it's telling you whatever level you get to, whatever satisfaction you may have from seeing spiritual and emotional growth in yourself, the key thing is that today I have to go a little more to stay off of automatic. And tomorrow...
Constantly step outside your comfort zone.
Yeah. Even if it's just one step, that one step, as we'll see, is worth a tremendous amount compared to all the other steps before. Because it's that step outside the comfort zone that is actually keeping me off of automatic, that's keeping me working. So let's look inside. ובזה יובן מה שכתוב. So with this,
Where am I? Myself?
Yep.
With this distinction in mind, we may understand the verse.
okay, so let's look at the verse he's presenting to open up this topic. ושבתם וראיתם בין צדיק לרשע בין עובד אלוקים לאשר לא עבדו.
And you will return and see the difference between the righteous man and the wicked one, between he who serves God and he who serves him not.
And so this is a section from Malachi, right? And he's actually bringing up a question from the Talmud, which is from Chagiga, where Ben Hehe asks Hillel, what's this verse from Malachi talking about? You'll see the difference between you'll return. This is talking about, the times of the Messianic era where we're all back and we have the highest possible perspective. And at that point, we'll see the difference between a tzaddik and a rasha, between one who serves God and one who doesn't serve God. And so Ben Hehe goes to Hillel and says, why these two sets of terms? If you see the difference between a righteous man and a wicked man, isn't that the same as one who serves God and one who doesn't serve God? Like, okay, maybe it's just being poetical, but what's the extra meaning there? Why not just say between a righteous and a wicked? Done. Why the extra terms? Is there any other meaning in that? So we're going to explore that to see what it means to serve God and not serve God, both on the level of being a tzaddik or even a beinoni. And so let's look at the, why don't we go ahead with the Talmud raises the question.
The difference between he who serves God and the righteous man, tzaddik, is that he who serves God, written in present tense, describes one who is still presently laboring in his divine service.
Very good. So let me do the Hebrew for that. שההפרש בין עובד אלוקים לצדיק הוא שעובד הוא לשון הווה, שהוא באמצע העבודה. Right? So we're looking at the difference between one who serves God and one who serves God is not. Right? And here the Alter Rebbe says, look at what the word we're using is. One who serves God, Oved Elokim, versus the word tzaddik. Right? And so let's look at the term Oved Elokim, one who serves God, versus tzaddik, a righteous person. Tell me what is the difference between those two terms in terms of their qualities and their definition. Right? One who serves God, that's what kind of a description of someone? One who is serving God. That's.
Tzaddik.
Well, man,
I don't mean the labels. I mean that's a what? I'm describing the person using what kind of language? Someone who's serving God, that's what kind of language?
Working towards.
Yeah, working, same thing. So
towards
active,
things
right?
that God would want him to do.
Right.
not
So-
doing them as
so
well.
doing it the 100 times.
Doing,
100.
right? So it's doing. It's a verb, right?
It's a verb.
One who's serving God. That's an active description. We're calling it a verb. A tzaddik, that's what kind of description?
It's
It's a noun.
what
It's a
it
noun.
is.
And what it is.
What they are, exactly. So one is a noun, one is a verb. One is what they are, the tzaddik. One is what they are doing, someone who's serving God. That's what the Alter Rebbe is pointing out first, is that the
A lot of
difference...
repetition, the difference, yeah.
Yeah. One of the differences, when you say someone's a tzaddik, that's their identity. That's not necessarily describing something they're doing right now. When you say someone is serving God, that's something they have to be actively doing, right? It's an activity. Let's go on. Shehi hamilchama im hayetzer hara lehitgaber alav ulegarsho me'ha'ir ktana.
The service consists of the struggle against one's evil nature with the aim of overpowering it and banishing it from the small city, the body, which is like the city, whose conquest is the objective of both good and evil nature.
So that's the doing part, right? Whatever level I'm at, if I'm a Russia and I'm just letting my animal nature just have its way and I'm just enjoying life, I'm not serving God. If I'm a Russia and I take a moment to try and curb that in, now I'm doing something, right? So I may not have the title of tzaddik, obviously, but in some way that is serving God. Compared to even a Beinoni who, for whatever reason, may not be pushing themselves, the tzaddik might be working harder right now than the Beinoni's working, even though the Beinoni has got themselves at a much higher level. So the idea of Oved Elokim, of serving God, is one of how much am I really doing now, genuinely at my level, not what have I achieved so far and what level am I at. And let's go back for a sec to the Mishnah, the Gemara, right? And just to tell you the story we'll get to, the way Hillel answered Ben Hehe was, he said, you have to understand, for example, the way the donkey drivers work, right? If you want to know what being someone who's serving God looks like, look at the donkey drivers. Because when you took a donkey ride, the first 10, parsa? I forget the first 10, clicks was one zuz. And then if you want to go one more beyond that, that was an additional full zuz. Right? So if I had to go 10 miles, that was that's one zuz. And then if I wanted to go one more mile, 11 miles, now it's 2 zuzim. Right? So I'm paying 10 times the amount for each mile for that extra mile. Why is that? Because the donkey's used to going 10 miles, or 10 zuzim, however far it was. Right? So there's an accustomed length, and the donkey's used to it, and the donkey sets on a journey, and they're ready to do 10 zuzim, 10 parsas, and they'll go. And now you say, one more donkey, and now the donkey starts braying, and we didn't get our break. That extra mile is basically worth as much as all the other miles in terms of real effort to do it. And Hillel said, it's like someone who reviews their studies 100 times versus 101 times. Right? That's just like that donkey. Someone who reviews their studies 100 times, for their time, that was normal. Right? They had no books, so they couldn't open it up and find it. If they wanted to learn something, they had to review it 100 times just to remember it, because they didn't have books like we have now. They didn't even have, in his time, the Talmud itself. It was all oral tradition. Nothing was allowed to be written down. So if you wanted to learn it, you had to review it 100 times, and they were used to it. You'd sit and you'd review it 100 times. But that's not serving God. Serving God is when you've done the 100 times, which is customary, and now you do one more. Right? And that one more, both Hillel and the Alter Rebbe are saying, is worth more than the other 100 combined, because that's the time where I become someone who is serving God. Right? If I've done my 100 and I'm used to it, that's not work for me. That's habit. So all these are getting at the same message, that whatever level we're at, the enemy of any level is automatic. Right? If God willing, one of us one day becomes a Beinoni, and we realize that it's been a long time since we've ever even thought a self-centered thought, and we're at that level where no matter what our emotions throw at us, we're just going to put it out of our mind, do the right thing. Great, but make sure that day I wake up and I push myself a little past that level that I've gotten to.
So you can't coast and still be what level you were at?
Exactly.
You can coast, and you'll still be technically the same level, but you won't be somebody that's serving God at that level, right? So the distinction here is now someone who's serving God and someone who's not serving God. And that applies whether you're an incomplete tzaddik or a Beinoni or a Rush or whatever, right? So there's levels and there's levels, right? So on the dimension of halachic realities and strength of the soul and strength of the divine soul, I may be a total Beinoni, but as we'll see, I may stop serving God and still stay on the level of Beinoni, and then I'm a Beinoni that's not serving God, and who wants to be that? Right? Anybody? Not me, right? שלא יתלבש באיברי הגוף, so that, where do we go? Yeah?
No, we skipped the
We
service.
skipped something.
Oh,
The service consists of struggle against
I thought we read that, okay. שהיא המלחמה עם היצר הרע להתגבר עליו ולגרשו מהעיר קטנה.
The service
The consensus seems to be we did it, so yes, שלא יתלבש באיברי הגוף.
Okay, you're old man.
We can review on the video if you so desire. I think we did it, yeah. So that it should not vest.
Whose turn is
Go
it?
ahead.
So that it should not vest itself in the organs of
Okay.
the body through evil thought, speech, or action. Doing battle against evil nature is the avoda, service of he who serves God.
Right, so for an old person, or for a Beinoni, they're always battling against their inclinations, and that's one who is serving God. That's the activity of getting off of automatic and working today instead of just saying, oh, I got the little Beinoni, now I'm good. שהוא באמת עבודה ועמל גדול להילחם בו תמיד. Is constant?
This constant battle with one's evil nature truly entails much effort, service, and toil.
Right, so it normally is hard work, and most Beinanim are not going to have to worry about going on automatic because most Beinanim will always have their Yetzer Hara pushing them to try and get off their commitments, and they'll always have to push back. So that's, you're anyone that's achieved a level of Beinoni, for the most part, this is not really something they have to worry about because they're always having to fight and work to be a Beinoni. Vayunu ha-Beinoni.
What Paul alluded to.
And this is,
This is the band.
yeah, it is he.
It is he who must wage this battle. It is the Bano. The second two N's in there, and I never know what
Bano.
Yeah, we say Beinoni.
Bano.
There you go.
Who is called he who serves God, for he is actively engaged at present in his service.
All right, so now we're going to make a few distinctions, and they all apply.
Sounds like the psychic is dead already.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah. So on one level, the tzaddik is actually the person who doesn't serve God. Because the tzaddik has completed all that. Right? So we're looking at this, he doesn't really crystal clear make different distinctions here, but they all apply, right? So it's a multi-dimensional kind of idea we're looking at. So from one perspective, the tzaddik who has completed the transformation of their animal soul, their work is done, they're not someone who's serving God, they're, as he'll say, they are a servant of God. Right? As he's about to say, Aval tzaddik nikra eved Hashem b'shem to'ar. The tzaddik, on the other hand, is designated a servant, an eved of God, as a title conferred on the person himself. It's not a description of one's active role as in one who serves.
That's what they call Moshe, servant.
Exactly, yeah. So a tzaddik is an eved Hashem, a servant of God, but they're not serving, they have the title servant. They're done with their service. They've transformed their animal soul, and from this perspective, they no longer have to fight against an animal soul. Right? For them, now they just love doing good things. They love doing other-centered things. It's not hard for them, and they do it with joy. So that's not struggling and serving God. That's being a servant of God. And the Beinoni is the one who is serving God, as opposed to the tzaddik, who's just a servant of God. So from that perspective, the Beinoni is actually still serving God and is more active in that verb of service than the tzaddik, who's just a servant. כמו שם חכם או מלך שכבר נעשה חכם או מלך.
The term servant is similar to the title sage or king bestowed upon one who has already become a sage or a king.
Right, so Eved is more like judge or king or duke. Right, this is the title that's there now permanently, and if they're not working towards it, they can just wake up without doing anything, and they're still going to be king or duke or judge. It's established. Right, this is not an active work. They're not in a law school right now. Let's just get down to the first of Shvat. We'll do one more. כך זה כבר עבד וגמר לגמרי עבודת המלחמה עם הרע עד כי ויגרשהו וילך לו וליבו חלל בקרבו.
So too, he, the tzaddik, has already effected and completely accomplished his service of waging war with the evil in him. He has banished it, and it has gone from him, leaving the seed of evil nature in his heart void within him. Having completed this task, the tzaddik has earned the title servant of God.
Right. We now see
We now see that the expression a righteous man and he who serves God are not repetitious. He who serves God is not a description of a tzaddik, but of a Beinoni.
Right. So interesting, a warning that we may think that tzaddik is the be-all and end-all, but in some ways a Beinoni is actually working harder. And then next week we'll look at, he goes on to say, even in a Beinoni, there's a level of a Beinoni that serves God and doesn't serve God, depending on sort of their nature. Yeah?
Okay.
Good stuff. Any questions? Hang out. Beautiful learning.
We don't meet next week. We don't meet
I'm out of town. I'm out of town.
2 weeks.
I guess we missed 2 weeks in a row.
Is that so? Oh.
Yeah,
Two weeks off.
Okay. Maybe it's a good time to go back and review something.
There you go.
100 times.
101 times.
101 times.
the Seder plate in kabbalistic terms.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that. Yeah.
That little section on the bottom.
It's beautiful.
The order of
Right, the Matzah Chochmah Bina Da'at, or Keter Chochmah Bina, Zroas Chesed,
You fell asleep, you missed that.
Egis Gvura.
I was paid more attention than you did.
I don't think so. You checked the tapes. Check tape at 11. I don't know. I always thought you were so on the ball. I think it's this old age stuff.
Ah, I was wondering why. I always wonder why horseradish was Netzach. It seemed like it shouldn't be on the right side, but he explains it here. He says the essence of it is sweetness coming from the right side. That the lettuce we use for horseradish is sometimes sweet, sometimes bitter. And so that's why the horseradish is on the right, because even though it's bitter, its essence is sweet. I've actually wondered that for a long time.
All right.
And the plate is malchut. It's nice. Try sharing that at your average Seder and see what happens to the kids.